And I don't know when I'm gonna have time to get all of these thoughts out, all of these feelings, because then she'll be here and we're all gonna be really tired. Now you can see us.
What?
Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm gonna have my little
robot guy
helping out
as a robot.
My 2-year-old sleeping right now, and I really wanted to get this vlog done. And during quarantine, you just never know when you're gonna get a free moment. So I've got my helper with me. Today's video is all about C-sections, and more specifically, repeat C-sections. I really wanted to make this video and talk about it too because I think that the term C-section is often feared, especially by first-time moms. I know that when I was a first-time mom, I was terrified of a C-section. It's the whole reason that I went with a midwife and I tried to go the all-natural route, is because I thought if you're in a hospital, you're gonna end up with a C-section. Like, there's a 50% chance. Now, this video is not about birth center births versus hospital births versus home births or anything like that. No, that's a whole other topic. If you want to hear about that, send me a message and I'll be happy to chat with you. This is just about my C-section experience. Anyways, there's not a ton of information out there about C-sections. I don't think a ton of women really like talking about having a C-section, let alone a repeat C-section. So I just wanted to make a video about my birth stories because my oldest son here was an emergency C-section. My second son was a C-section planned, and my third baby is also going to be a scheduled C-section. So let's get into it. I've got my cup of coffee. How you doing? So this story all begins with this guy right here. I was 27 years old and I was expecting my first baby. I watched a documentary called The Business of Being Born. Maybe you've heard of it. After watching it, I was convinced that if I had a hospital birth, I was gonna end up with a C-section. I thought that interventions would be pushed on me and that I would end up going off of my birth plan, that things would just get out of control really quickly and easily. I had a lot of anxiety about it and a lot of fear surrounding the possibility of having a C-section. Long story short, because I don't want this video to be an hour long, especially with it being a sit-down video. No. My son, I went into labor. I went with a midwife at a birth center and my doula came over and she said, hey, it's time. Your contractions are a minute apart. Let's go to the birth center and have your baby. So we got there and lo and behold, I was only 2 centimeters dilated. So I went back home. I labored in my home, in my bed, on my own until my water broke.
Wait, your water broke?
This is a conversation I've not had with my kid yet. Anyways, so once my water broke, my doula noticed that the fluid was not clear. Usually when your water breaks, you want the waters to be clear. Mine had green in it, green and brown, which is usually a sign of meconium, which is a sign that your baby is in distress. So we called my midwife to see what we should do, and she had me come back into the birth center. And when we got there, it was determined that because of the consistency of the meconium, that it wasn't anything to worry about. I continued to labor. The baby's heart rate was fine, and mine supposedly was fine as well. I continued to labor for a total of 18 hours. And when it was time to push, I ended up pushing for 4 hours and I could not get my baby out. The head midwife, the owner of the birth center, actually came into the room, saw what was going on, and she checked me and noticed that I was dehydrated because I had not used the restroom. And when they put a catheter in me, they couldn't get anything out. It was like jelly. Sorry if that's TMI, but that's what happened in my birth story. So that freaked me and my husband out. We decided, okay, well, this clearly isn't working. Let's transfer to a hospital and maybe they'll do like a vacuum assist or something like that. We get to the hospital. It turns out that my blood pressure is actually in the 150s, which is really high. I was not doing good. The baby's heart rate, his heart rate was still really great. So we were thankful for that. And I made the decision to do a C-section right then and there because honestly, I had gone without an epidural because when you do a birth center birth in the US, you can't have an epidural or Pitocin or anything like that. I was exhausted. I was tired. The contractions there was no break. It was like I was in a constant state of having a contraction because my body was working so hard to try and get my baby out, but he wasn't coming out. In fact, when they wheeled me into the OR room, it took 3 nurses holding me upright because I couldn't even sit up anymore for them to get the spinal anesthesia in so that they could do the C-section. So I told you my first son's birth story kind of to paint the picture of why I ended up with a C-section. The recovery was not so great. It turned out that I actually had preeclampsia. After my emergency C-section, I was hooked up to a magnesium drip for 24 hours. So I had to be hooked up for 24 hours to this magnesium drip, which if you've ever had one, oh my gosh, it causes hot flashes, like your whole body just feels like it's on fire. And that meant that I couldn't get out of the bed to try walking right after surgery, because when you have a C-section, they actually get you up and walking within a couple of hours after the surgery because it helps with the recovery, it helps prevent scar tissue buildup and things like that. So I had that going against me. And so by the time that I got the magnesium drip out, all of the anesthesia from the surgery had worn off and it was really painful for me to try and walk. And then I would say recovery-wise, I mean, I was also recovering from a vaginal birth. He was in the birth canal and they had to push him back inside of me to then cut me open and get him out. So I was recovering not only from the C-section and the pain of the incision, but also from a vaginal birth. All in all, I would say that my recovery was about 6 months, only because I think my body had just been through so much stress. I mean, 6 months out, it was still uncomfortable for me to go upstairs even. All of that to say, it was pretty traumatic. Emergency C-section, not the greatest. I don't mean to tell you all of this to spark fear or anything like that. This is just my story, and I think why I had so much fear going into my second birth, which was a scheduled C-section. My 4-year-old is showing you all of his favorite toys now. So with my second son, he was a scheduled C-section for 39 weeks. So I had a lot of fear going into my second son's birth because I thought for sure it was gonna be the same type of recovery that I had with my emergency C-section. This was so far from the truth. In fact, I would say my total recovery time from my second son's birth was like 2 weeks. Like within 2 weeks, I felt like I could get up and I could walk, I could shower normally, and that I could do all of the things that I wanted to do and did before having a baby fairly normal again. It was also a really healing experience because when my first son was born, he actually had to go to the NICU for a few hours. Because of the meconium that I mentioned, when they pulled him out, he was actually covered in green. He wasn't breathing. The meconium was in his throat, in his lungs. They had to intubate him to clear his air passageways. And it was just a very scary experience. But with my second son, as soon as she opened me up, so to speak, and got his head out, like his body was still inside of my tummy and he was already crying. Healthy set of lungs, no problems. She pulled him out, cleaned him up.
Even when he was not doing well with the doctor.
Yeah, Ethan. I'm talking about when Ethan was born now. So crying, breathing, all of that stuff was not an issue with my second son. Also, I was really worried because he was scheduled C-section at 39 weeks and was like, oh my gosh, I'm not even going the full 40 weeks. What if he's a low birth weight, whatever. My second son was 9 pounds even when he was born. So he was a very healthy weight, very ready to come out. The recovery in the hospital was nice because I didn't have preeclampsia. There was no emergency. Everything happened just very calmly and predictable. So instead of rushing into an OR and having nurses hold me up to do a spinal anesthesia, I went in, I got checked in through pre-op. They put an IV in me. They made sure I had plenty of fluids through my IV. They run 2 bags of fluids through you before you have surgery to make sure that you're very hydrated. And then when they took me to the OR, like, I got up on the table myself. There was a very nice gentleman nurse who like gave me a big hug and held me when they did the spinal, because that part isn't the funnest. It feels like you're getting stung by a bunch of bees because of the local anesthesia and all that stuff. But it was very calm, and you know, I anticipated all of it. There was no emergency. And in fact, while they were doing the surgery, I was chatting with my anesthesiologist. Like, she was telling me about her kids. They had the radio playing. It was just all in all a very healing.
What are you talking about?
All in all, it was just a very healing experience. Why am I gonna have a repeat C-section for my 3rd baby? My baby girl is breech, meaning she is head up, butt down. Typically, if you have a breech baby, they schedule you for a C-section regardless. I'm fairly certain she's not gonna flip, because I actually have what's called a heart-shaped uterus. So my uterus, instead of going like that, it makes a heart, and her head is stuck in one of the loops, and so she's not going anywhere. I'm going to have a scheduled C-section with her the way that I did with my 2nd son. I have no reason to suspect that recovery will be any different, that the procedure will be any different. But yeah, that is my birth stories for my 2 boys. This is what my plans are for my 3rd delivery. My little dude here is getting a bit impatient with me, so I'm gonna sign off now. I just wanted to make sure I got this all on camera, because I'm in my last month of pregnancy and this is gonna go by so fast, and I don't know when I'm gonna have time to get all of these thoughts out, all of these feelings, because then she'll be here and we're all gonna be really tired. I hope you all are having a wonderful day. I will see you in my next video. Bye.
Bye.